Ford Focus Zetec 1600 Mk2 on a 10 plate. I say this because I spent a while looking at other leak videos and they were for other models and I couldn't find any for the Zetec, and it seems to be quite different to some of the other models. Right, if your car has a boot hinges like these, then it's like mine, and I think mine is a Mark II. I only found one video that showed my model, and he pointed out some places he had leaks, but he didn't mention where I think mine is coming from. So he said put sealer around the hinges and especially above the hinge, as he felt the water was coming in through there, being squeezed through. Also, in other videos they talk about the body panel seams where the body panel joins, but on this model the seams are all very different and all seem to join with the seam overlapping downhill, so water will run off or run over. Many videos point to the screws under the rear lights, and on this model they are different to those videos. The screws on those videos are sunk in a little bit, but on this model they have a grommet underneath the screws, or a waterproof washer or seal, so I'm not sure that's the problem. But I did notice that the grommet that the cable comes through for the lights wasn't as tight as say it could be. On mine, I pulled it out and had a look down to see where it went, and it sort of drops on top of the wheel arch in the back, which is where I noticed the highest point of the water was, or where I thought it was. So I kind of think it could be this grommet. So I've put silicone sealer around the hinges, the body seams, and I put sealer around the screw holes for the lights, just in case. And I have put sealer around the grommet for the lights. It's not very pretty. I don't care. I don't intend to ever sell this car. It's already an old banger. I'm just going to drive it into the ground. All I want is the water to stop coming in, steaming up the front windscreen and stinking the place out. To get the lights off, there are two screws on the inside of the sort of door groove, if you like. That is just those two screws. When you take those two screws off, it doesn't really move. So what I did was I put my fingers just under the bottom sort of pointy bit of the lights and gave them a wiggle and sort of lifted up, because on the other side of where the screws are two pins that go into a hole. They sort of pop in. So if you can just give it a little wiggle, and as you pry it up from the bottom, it'll pop out. Some people say to twist. I don't know how you can twist, but that's what it is. So it's literally those two screws, and then it's these two popper things. So, you know, however best you can figure it out. But it does come up. If I did both of mine quite easily from the side, and I'm not a mechanic. I'm not very gentle, and usually plastic things just break in my hand. So that was that. I did take out the back plastic thing on the back of the boot, and the two plastic things on the side, so that I could pull the carpet one side to see where the water was coming from, and also to help it dry out. So there are these popper things for this sort of plastic bit that goes on the boot, and you sort of then pull and it comes out. Right. Frighteningly, you think it's broken, and then the two plastic things on the side, again, there's no screws, they just pull off. This is where I think the water is falling from the grommet above, and it's falling onto the top of the wheel arch here. Well, that's what I think. It's difficult to tell because the water soaks into all the sound softening material in the boot. So, but this was the highest point that the water has reached. So I think it is running down here. Fingers crossed anyway. There was another place someone mentioned, and that is the rain gutter on the roof of the car. You need to pull the plastic piece that sits inside the rain gutter up, and apparently there's a seal in there, and sometimes that can dry out or come and you have to reseal it. But that video was for a different model. But I break most plastic things, so I'm leaving that to the last. I'm just doing all the easy stuff first. And just one tip I will point out, I haven't screwed the lights in yet either, because even though the sealer is touch dry, I don't want the light casing or cluster to seal to any sealer I've put around the screws, because remember, you do need to be able to get those clusters out if you need to replace a lamp. So basically I just rested them in and so that I could shut the boot down later, because it's parked on the street, so I need to lock it up. There are some really good leak videos out there if you haven't found them already. I just did this one because the videos I watched were all for other models, and it appears that they have very different setups in the boot. So for the Mark III, everyone talks about these vents, these air vents in the boot. Well, I can't find those at all on this model. I haven't taken the bumper off, but they tell you to look underneath and you can see a bung, and if you pull this bung down and there's water in it, it's these vents leaking. Well, I can't even find where these bungs are, so I thought I would just do this for the Mark II, which I think this one, my car, is. I hope this helps a bit. If you watch the others, I'm sure it will. I mean, I saw quite a few, and there's quite a few places and different models where it leaks, and the guys that made those videos do much tidier jobs and give you some good tips. So I'm going to leave it now for 24 hours, and I'll have to throw some water over the car to check it. I don't like doing this. I would rather wait for rain to test it properly, because at the end of the day, rain just keeps going all night or for ages, and water can sometimes take a while to find its way in. This isn't the first time I've tried to fix water leaks on a Ford. I think every Ford I've ever owned has leaked, so I've had some experience of this. So tomorrow I will have to throw some water over it, because I filmed this in March 2026 during the wettest winter on record, but it appears that that has now stopped, and it doesn't look like there's any rain forecast for at least another fortnight. 24 hours later. I gave it 24 hours because cheap silicone needs that sort of time to cure before it gets wet. I only paid £4.50 for this sealer. I will give you a tip. If you need to do this in a hurry and it's wet, do try using something called CT1. I've used it before for sealing showers and things like that, and it is brilliant stuff, but it will cost at least double the £4.50. Right, it didn't rain overnight, but in the morning there was a heavy dew. When I removed the rear light, there was water sitting around the screws and the grommet. I don't know if you can see that, so it was probably a good idea just to seal these up. Right, now I screw the lights on before I test with the bucket of water. Here we go. Now let's see if I've fixed the problem. Okay, I can't see any water coming down onto the wheel arches, so that's good. But look, I did spot this, a small drop of water appearing from nowhere. It's really strange. You can't see a hole or anything. It just seems to be oozing through this sealer. I'm starting to think that this model has those vents that other people have been talking about, because the people who have the vents explain that the water came from this area in a strange way when you have problems with those vents. I guess I could just put sealer over the area and that would stop it coming in, but I feel that might not be a good job. I want to check that more damage isn't being done. If I don't find out where the water's coming in, am I going to end up with something rusting a hole in or something like that? So I'm going to take the bumper off and see if I have those vents and see if that's the problem. Taking the bumper off. I'm not looking forward to this because I know getting the screws out is bound to be difficult. With old cars, undoing anything is always a problem. On this model, which I now think is a Mark 2.5, there are 10 places the bumper is fixed. Two 7mm bolts, which are sort of just under the tailgate at the top of the bumper, and 4 torque screws under, so 2 under each wheel arch is what you need to take out. And completely underneath the car at the back of the bumper there are 2 flanges, and there's 2 Phillips screw sort of things in there, so you need a Phillips screwdriver. You undo those and they sort of push the plastic out, so they're little plugs, so you undo the screws and the plugs will come out. And then once you've done that, you go back to the wheel arches, and there's a 10mm bolt on both sides on the corner behind the wheel arch, which you need to take out. Taking the bumper off has turned into a nightmare, as I knew it would. The 10mm bolts are the problem. Other people have mentioned these bolts, and yes, I'm having a problem with the bolt just spinning. The first one, I managed to get it undone so far, sort of halfway, and then it's just spinning. I had what I thought was a good idea. Behind the bumper is this plastic spacer that just keeps it in shape. So I thought what I would do is draw a hole through the plastic at just about the height of the bolt, so I could put a 10mm spanner on the other end and be able to hold the bolt and stop it spinning. Brilliant, I thought. But I drilled the hole, shone a torch in, and discovered that the bolt is a captured bolt and I can't get to the head. A captured bolt, meaning the head of the bolt is held, in this case in plastic, and you should only need 1 spanner to undo the nut. However, over time the nuts and bolts have corroded and are hard to get off, even if you use WD-40, and I sprayed a lot of WD-40 on this and left it for a while. What happens is the captured end starts to spin because you're putting so much pressure on the nut to try and turn it. It doesn't turn, and it turns the bolt as well, and of course the plastic is soft, and then it just wears its hole in the plastic and stops spinning. Luckily for me, on the other corner the bolt head came out of the plastic. Where I'd been turning it, it had kind of worn itself through it. I also noticed the spacer has been broken there, so I don't know if something happened before I got the car. Because the bolt head had pulled through, I could see what I was working with. Now that I was going to need to come up with a new way to reattach the bumper, I decided to cut the other bolt off. I had already spent 5 hours trying to get these off without damaging them. Plus, when the bolt did come off, I tried to get the nut off, and it was not going to come off even when I could get to both ends. It was just so badly corroded on the end bit. So I took the back wheel off to give myself more room, got my reciprocating saw and cut the other bolt off. Now the bumper was free, I could see that I do have vents. Not as many as the Mark III, but I still have vents. Plus, I noticed a place where I think water is getting in that no one else has mentioned before in the videos I've seen. It will be dark in about half an hour, so I'm going to clear up and move on to day 3. Day 3. Before you pull the bumper off, don't forget just to reach up underneath where the lights are and just untwist the light bulb as if you were changing the bulb, and pull that out. Saves you having to take the light housings out. It's just the simplest thing to do. Removing the bumper now shows the vents quite clearly, and I have found the bungs that other people were talking about. They're under here. To remove the vents, there are clips on the top and bottom. I just squeezed the top and bottom of the vent together and the bottom popped out. You can sort of feel what's going on if you do that. It's quite soft plastic, so just be careful. You could probably use a screwdriver or something to lever it out, but squeezing them together seemed to work. You can see inside the compartment the sound dampener. I took that out so we can have a look inside to see what's going on. What I did notice is that this compartment is actually open to the main boot as well, and it was wet yesterday a little bit. I could poke my finger up through the bung and I felt it was wet, but it had dried out by the time I got to it. I think this corner in this compartment, it drops down. It's like a little sump almost. I think that's where that drop of water we saw coming through the seam, or appeared to come through the seam, was coming from. So I do think this was one of the leaks. So I just put some sealer around the vent hole and popped it back in. I did this on both sides. I did, however, notice this circle above the vent that appears to have like a paper cover, but it's a hole, and the cover is sort of coming away from the bodywork. So, and it does lead into the compartment, and I think this is pretty much more likely where the water was coming from. So I just smeared sealer over the top of the paper, and I did this on both sides. I think this hole, because it leads into the compartment and the boot, is probably the most likely culprit for water getting in, because it is just a paper cover and it is peeling away. So I just put sealer over the top of the paper cover and to stick it to the bodywork. I did this on both sides. Now, while that sealer's curing, it's time to look at the repair of the bumper. Now for the repair of the bumper. Because I cut the bolts off, I need to replace them. Luckily, there is enough room behind the spacer on the bumper for me to squeeze a 10mm bolt behind and push it through the hole where the old bolt was. I used a penny washer just to make sure it doesn't pull through. I also used an auger drill bit to make a hole in line with the bolt through the spacer, big enough for the ring of a 10mm spanner to fit through. With that done, it's time to remount the bumper and see if my plan works. Okay, I offer the bumper up, ensuring I get the locators in place, and I push it on. Now to check the replacement bolts are lined up. And they appear to be. Now I put a nut and washer on the end of the new bolts and do them up. Using the hole I made, I push a 10mm ring spanner into the hole to hold the bolt while I'm doing up the nut. It works a treat, and the job takes no time at all. So now to screw everything else back in. So the 7mm bolts under the tailgate. The torque screws, I think they're T25s, under the wheel arch. And don't forget the Phillips screws underneath the bumper at the back. And also remember to pop the lamps back into the bumper lights and give them a twist, as you would if you were changing the bulb. Saves you taking out the light housings and possibly breaking those clips like I would. Well, with all that done, it doesn't look too bad. Pretty much looks the same as it did before I started. Now, my car is old and I'm not like precious about it. I just don't want it to leak, and I just saved myself like a load of money by doing this. So I will now give it 24 hours for the sealer to cure properly before testing it again. Day 4. and another test. Right, that's got that nice and wet. Let's have a look and see if it worked. Okay, still leaking, but I think it's coming from above, so all the work I did yesterday wasn't for waste. If I put my hand up under the wing, I can feel a panel joint and it's wet there. Here, if you can see, I'll try and show you, it's hard holding the camera. There's the panel join, and if you look from above, it's about here. So I don't think it's the light fitting. I have checked the light fitting, and I think the water leaks coming from higher up because they're not leaking. So I decided to pour water in steps going up the bodywork. Now, after doing that, there is only one place left, and strangely, I said I was going to leave it for last, and that's the roof gutter. And removing the plastic bit in the gutter seems quite easy in the end. I just lifted the edge with my finger and it came out. It just has these fins that wedge the plastic bit in, so no plastic clips that I normally break. Great. Why didn't I look there first? Well, because everyone on YouTube told me it was the other places. And to be fair, I think I did have other leaks on the other side. Anyway, here seems to be the problem. I think I can see a crack on the end there, and if I pour water in just that area, water appears on the seam in the boot and the seam above under the light fitting. Who would have believed water could squeeze out of the panels like that? I have waited for the bodywork to dry so the sealer works okay, and now I'm going to seal that area up. With that done, yes, I'm going to wait 24 hours for the sealer to dry again. If I'd spent £12 on CT1, I could have done this wet and tested it wet, because CT1 doesn't care about being wet. In fact, it likes it. It makes it cure faster. 24 hours later, again. And day 5. Start with a test, as always. Now, let's check it. So far, so good. Let's just double check, and I'll pour more water on. Okay. Still good. I'm going to give it a further test and wash the car. This will give it a prolonged exposure to water as it's not raining. Now the cleaning is done, let's check again. Okay, no water. I think that's it. The place I saved for last was the place I should have started. Right, I am that confident that I found the leak now. I'm going to put the trim back. Just clip it back, making sure you get the panels underneath the door seal. Right, that's it. I'm not going to put the floor back for the moment. It has now started to rain, amazingly, so I will keep an eye on it for a couple of days. But I think that's it. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you find your leak. Thanks for watching.